In this video, we will be reacting to Europeans sharing things that Americans do that would not work in their home countries in Europe.
There are some things that Americans do that just are not a thing in Sweden. First thing, how Americans pose in photos. This was actually such a culture shock thing for me when I first moved there, because my friends would ask someone to take a photo of us, and then we would go, which is fine, it's just not a thing here. Here it's like, it's all supposed to be candid. Another thing that would drive Swedish people crazy is all the curfews and the rules in American households compared to Swedish ones. Swedish young people are so much more free in what they're allowed to do. Next thing is paper plates. We do not do paper plates in Sweden unless it's a huge chill party. The next thing is also just in certain places, but it's the hats, especially in like Western United States. They're just not a thing in Sweden. Next one is crazy. A lot of Americans don't like water. I had never before met so many people that don't like water as when I moved to America. And I mean, we're spoiled here. Our tap water is amazing. It's better than bottled water. But it's so crazy to me. Like, how can you not like water? Now, let me know if you want a video about Swedish things that are just not a thing in America.
Okay, so we have a lot to unpack here. For starters, posing in pictures. So I'm not gonna lie, she hit the nail on the head with how she did that one pose. I feel like that is the generic American girl pose, pretty much no matter where in the USA you go. And I do not know why it's the case. I guess really what it comes down to, and maybe I'm reading a little too deep into this, but just based on my experience living abroad, traveling the world nearly 2 years, a lot of that time having been spent in Europe, I feel like Americans are just more performative in general. And don't confuse that with expressiveness. A place like Italy, for example, based on everything I've seen and heard about Italy, is equally as expressive and passionate as America, if not more. But Americans are more performative. They want to be seen. They want to get attention from other people. Now, maybe that's more of a human characteristic overall, but I feel like the societal norms in countries like Sweden, especially, sort of discourage that desire. And because of that, people seek that out through conformity. Now, the next thing, curfews and freedom. I do feel like in the US, a lot of teenagers are very, very restricted in their freedom level, but I feel like in the US, it's actually partially justified, primarily because of the safety concerns. I mean, there's kind of this saying that nothing good happens after just insert time late at night. And in Europe, I never really found that to be the case. You don't have parties just getting shot up like in the US. In the US, that is a valid concern, especially in particular cities and regions. And that's something that if I was a parent in the US, I would not want my kids to have to risk experiencing. Of course, they also run the risk of getting shot while just trying to get an education at school, but the likelihood that that will happen is much lower than if they go to a party and they're out at 2 a.m. That's just what I've personally observed. So I do think that in that particular context, it is somewhat justifiable, but in reality, it's indicative of an issue that needs to be addressed rather than patched up. Now, as far as water goes, I actually brought this up in a video maybe a month ago that I actually believe Americans don't drink a whole lot of water, contrary to the stereotype, and people gave me hell in the comments. I'm so glad that she brought that up because when you go to the US, what you'll find is that most Americans really don't even drink water on a day-to-day basis, in large part because the tap water is not as high quality. But even if it was, Americans just favor flavored drinks. And look, to each their own, but I reckon that if Americans simply replaced their flavored drinks, their sodas, their artificial juices, and all of that stuff with water, we would see the obesity rates drop pretty significantly.
Cultural differences between Norway and the US that shocked me, part 2. First of all, we have the drinking water here in the US. I'm so sorry, but it's so bad. In Norway, we shower in Voss water. We just drink the water straight from the tap. It's the same water that's in like the Voss bottles as we shower and drink from the tap. I guess it's different throughout the country here in the US, but at least here in Florida, I'm so sorry, but the water tastes horrible. It tastes like chlorine, so I have to buy bottled water. And in Norway, nobody buys bottles of water. Next up, we have the tipping culture here in the US. I have never given tips before in a Norwegian restaurant or any place in Norway. We do have tips in Norway, we just don't give it because the salary as a server in Norway is the same as any other job. I know servers in the US hate to see Europeans coming because they don't tip. It's really bad because that's literally what the servers here in America live off. If you're Norwegian and don't tip in the US, Another thing that really shocked me here in the US is ads for, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on TikTok, and like grown-up drinks and medicine. In Norway, you're not allowed to advertise alcohol or smoking or like any of these things. But here it's like on the TV, and like the way that they read all of the side effects. Nausea is really common side effect, la la. I'm shook. Then you have the flags that you see everywhere here in the US. They're on buildings, shorts, t-shirts, the caps with the American flag on. In Norway, I don't think I've ever seen a flag except if it's like a birthday or something special going on, or May 17th, which is our Constitution Day. No one uses flags. Like I've never seen a shorts with a Norwegian flag. Next thing is the public restrooms here in the US, like the stalls. What is that? Who designed those? I'm so sorry, but who designed those restrooms? In Norway, you have like a separate room with a door that you can lock. Also the locks, actually. In Norway, there's like a lock that you can't physically open the door with the... If you try to open the door, as long as it's locked, you won't open it. But here, I'm always like, oh, is it even locked? Because when I try to open the door, I lock it and then I use the thing and the door opens up. So I'm like, did I lock it or is it not locked? Like I'm so confused. But in Norway, if you lock it, you can't open the door. But also the restrooms, like you can see, you can handshake the person that's sitting next to you. You can like see who it is. You're all up in their business. In Norway, you have like your own room. Sometimes there's music. You can turn the water on if you would like. I miss Norwegian restrooms. I'm so sorry. The last thing is, in Norway, we have 5 weeks of vacation every year that we have to take. It's paid vacation, so you get paid for going on vacation. And also, if you're pregnant or get a baby, you have 9 months that you get paid after the baby is born, where you can stay, or the mom gets paid for 9 months for staying at home with the baby and taking care of the baby until they're in kindergarten. And after those, I think it's 9 months, when the mom has to go back to work, the dad gets a month or something. I'm not sure like exactly how long it is, but they get time off also paid to take care of the baby. I don't really know how it works here, but I've heard that people have to go back to work weeks after giving birth, which is crazy. But then again, I feel like it's more normal to be a housewife here in the US than it is in Norway. Being a housewife isn't really a thing in Norway, so I guess that's a good thing here. Anyways, that was my part 2 of differences from Norway and here in the US. Like this video if you would like a part 3. Bye!
We already covered tap water, but I just want to reiterate, American tap water is definitely lower quality. That was one of the first things my girlfriend noticed coming from the Netherlands to the US when she visited me for the first time there, was that the tap water definitely did not taste nearly as good. I wouldn't even know because I don't drink American tap water. That's just never something that I personally did. Now, as far as tips, I have covered tipping culture quite a bit on this channel, but recently I saw a comment on someone else's video saying that American servers would prefer the tipping culture in the US because it's not uncommon for servers to make $100,000 a year. Now, listen, I've never been a server, but I have worked at a restaurant. And it is my understanding that that is most certainly not the case. Sure, maybe in a place like New York City, if you're working at a high-end establishment, you might be able to pull in 6 figures with the tips. Because if you're getting 20% of the bill and the bill is $400, you do a few of those a day, that's going to add up over time. But that is most certainly not the norm. Now, as far as flags go, I actually have a pretty contrarian take about this. I think that the perception from outside of the US is that Americans are overly nationalistic, but I think this is also very performative as well. I think that most Americans actually don't care a whole lot about the US. They just like to wear the flag because they want to feel like they're a part of something. But when it comes time to vote, they always vote against their best interest and against the best interest of the people around them.
I don't know what lives in my mind rent-free.
So unfortunately, I had to cut the rest of the clip out due to copyright purposes, which fair play, it is her video at the end of the day. That said, if you don't feel like clicking the link in the description, let me go ahead and briefly summarize the video for you. Basically, she is a British woman who moved to the American South. And when she went to her hairdresser in the American South, who, by her account, was a very sweet and nice woman, and asked her American hairdresser where she could find good Turkish food, her hairdresser did not know what turkey even was. She thought that she was talking about Thanksgiving turkey like they have in the USA. She had never heard of the country Turkey nor of the city Istanbul. And this blew her British mind. As far as Americans being geographically, we'll say, ignorant, I think a big part of it is because, again, America is a very geographically isolated place. But then again, so is Australia. And look, if you're a well-traveled person, you have come across at least a few Australians in your day, and they are some of the coolest, chillest people you've probably ever met in your life. Australians are all over the world, and I would say that they're even more geographically isolated than the USA is. So it has to be something deeper than that. I think a big part of it is a lot of Americans kind of just lack curiosity about the rest of the world. And as much as I would love to sit here and blame Americans for that lack of curiosity, I mean, let's just take a moment to step back and observe what the US actually is. It's basically just one big echo chamber of people who willingly decided, or who descend from people who willingly decided to go there. And so you have to think, the sort of cultural undertone there, the subconscious belief, is that America must be better than other places because my descendants fought so hard to come here. Now granted, that doesn't really apply to people who look like me, because people who are African American do not descend from people who chose to come to the US. But I think that's a big part of why Americans lack that curiosity. And then on top of that, the US is, aside from Canada, kind of surrounded by poorer countries. And you have people who are literally willing to risk their lives to go there. I think that growing up, seeing that, especially if you're from a border town, which she said she's from the South, so that's not that far from Central and South America. That's probably why that woman never thought to inquire about a place like Istanbul, even though Istanbul is, I don't know if it's an alpha city, but it's definitely a very well-known city around the world. But also, being from the South generally has the worst public education system in the US. So that's another factor. Plus, the poverty levels in the South tend to be much higher than the rest of the country. And because of that, people from the South, they're not even going to Aspen. I don't know if I know a whole lot of people who have just casually gone to Colorado for vacation because they just don't have the money to do all of that, let alone going to a place like Europe. That's completely just off the grid for them. That's uncharted territory, let alone a place like Istanbul.